Hey, I'm live. This is the first time I've ever streamed from my phone. Anyways, this is not going to be a very interesting stream. I'm just going to be doing my ELA homework and streaming myself doing it. So if that's not what you want to see, then stop watching now. Sorry, gotta set this up. Let me just put this up somewhere. Alright, I'm setting it up right there. Just get to work.
Went back to the clinic where it belonged.
People, look, I'm sorry. I have to. Hello, grammarians. Welcome to the English parts of speech. We're going to begin with the noun. The lovely, wonderful noun. Your friend and mine. They're mostly what you're going to encounter in sentences. Most sentences in English contain at least one noun or a pronoun, but we'll get to pronouns later. A noun is basically anything. It's not especially helpful definition, but we'll get more specific in a minute. It's basically anything at all. Now, the way this is taught in traditional grammar is to say that a noun is a person, place, or thing, which is fine. I think we can make that a little bit sharper and expand that out by saying what they are. The nouns are people, places, things, or ideas. I think ideas is the one that usually gets left out. So nouns can be people, places, things, and ideas. Let's put that in action. So, this is Raul. He's from Argentina. He is a penguin. Raul has big dreams. Now, okay, so I want to take these three sentences and find the nouns in them using the test. So, the test is it a person, or a living thing, place, a thing, or an idea? And if it's any of those things, then it falls into the category of words in English, which we call nouns. So, sentence number one. This is Raul. What is Raul? Well, Raul is a person or a living thing. So, next sentence. He is from Argentina. words are pronouns, or relative pronouns, and they can sometimes behave like nouns, but I wouldn't call them nouns. That'll just get confusing. So these are pronouns, and we'll get to them later. Sentence number 4, Raul has big dreams. So Raul again, we know from the first sentence that it's a person's name. So we're just going to say this. I'll slow it down again. And dreams. Now, a dream isn't a person, a place. It's not. It's a thing, sure. The reason I put in idea as a 4th category is to get at stuff you can't pick up. Like, for example, the word. So dream, yes, dream is a noun. Dream is maybe a little tangible because it's something you can imagine, but the idea of like a word like bigness, or if you prefer, size. The size of Raoul's plumage was astonishing. Look at that gorgeous plumage. It's a little penguin mohawk. The size of Raoul's plumage was astounding. Now, in that sentence, size is a noun, but it's not a physical thing. It's not a person. It's not a place. It's not something you can pick up. It's an idea. So that's why I include this 4th category. So, if you're trying to figure out whether or not a word is a noun, just apply this test. Ask yourself: is it a person, a place, a thing, or an idea? And you, my friend, will be golden. You can learn anything. David out. Hello, grammarians. I'd like to bring up the idea of the... So, grammarians, we have this class of words called adjectives. And what they do is they change stuff. Adjectives change stuff. Adjectives change stuff. They're part of this larger category of words that we call modifiers. Because that's what they do. They modify, they change things. So let's say I were to draw you a bear, a kind of human-looking, standing on 2 legs kind of bear. Sure. I could refer to this bear, and I could say, the bear. But I could also refer to this bear with a description, like, the friendly bear. But if that bear were blue, for instance, I could describe the bear as the blue bear. And in the blue bear, the word blue modifies bear. Blue is an adjective that describes bear. So adjectives change stuff, and they describe stuff. And if that bear were a different color, it would be, the red bear. And now that bear is red. Actually more of a salmon color, frankly. Let's put this into action with some sentences. Stephen is Connie's best friend. Now, what is the word that describes or changes another word in this sentence? Best. If you guessed best, you were correct. Best modifies friend. So Stephen is Connie's best friend. What is Stephen? A friend. What kind of friend is he? The best friend. The enormous pie is not for sale. Now, what's the adjective in that sentence? If you guessed enormous, you would be correct. Enormous, which means very big, is modifying or changing the word pie. Now, I thought a little bit of word origins might be kind of useful here. If we go back to the Latin, now you obviously don't need to speak Latin in order to make sense of English, but I thought it would be cool to look at what adjective literally means. So the word part ad comes from the Latin meaning to or toward or on. And the adjective part comes from a Latin word, jacere, means to throw. So an adjective is something that's kind of thrown on or thrown on top of something. Because you don't necessarily need adjectives in order for a sentence to make sense. The way that you need to have a verb or the way that you need to have a noun. Adjectives are a little bit extra. They're thrown on top. work on their own without the adjectives in them. Stephen is Connie's friend. The pie is not for sale. They would work. But what's nice about adjectives and modifiers of all kinds is that they add something extra. They add more detail. They change and describe stuff. That's what adjectives do. You can learn anything. David out. Hey, grammarians, I want to talk about prepositions, but before I do, I'm going to draw you a little hamster. Hello, grammarians. We're going to start talking about pronouns today. And, of course, that begins with the question, what are pronouns? Allow me to answer that question by way of a demonstration. Emma laughed so hard, milk came out of Emma's nose. Zach lifted the log. Zach found a worm under the log. So these sentences don't have pronouns, but what they do have is repeated nouns. We have Emma, and then we say Emma's again, and then we say Zach and the log, and then we say Zach and the log. But people are smart, right? We have relatively long attention spans. And so if we start off a sentence talking about Emma, and we're pretty sure that we're still talking about Emma, we don't need to say that name twice. We don't need to say Emma and then Emma again. So what a pronoun does is it allows you to take out the unnecessary noun. When we're very certain we know what we're talking about, so you don't have to say Emma a million times, you can replace Emma with her. Same thing applies to the second two sentences. We don't have to keep on mentioning Zach and the log when we know what we're talking about. So the first sentence will still read Zach lifted the log, but then in the second sentence, we can replace the name Zach, since we already know who we're talking about, with the word he, and we can replace this little phrase, the log, with it, since we know we're talking about the log. Now words like her and he and it are all pronouns. So what are pronouns? They are words that stand in for other words. Now obviously her, he, and it are not the only pronouns in English, but for now I just want you to think about the idea that a pronoun is a word that stands in for another word. You can learn anything. David out. So here's something weird and cool about English and languages in general, is that they have a sense of no kind of encoded into them. We call this grammatical number. And the way this plays out is in the difference between singular and plural in English. The idea of there being one of a thing or more than one of a thing. More than one of a thing. There we go. And this extends throughout the language, and I want to talk about today the way it applies to pronouns. So the singular form of me is me. That's the singular form. The plural form of it, the plural form of me is us. Because, there are many, assuming I was cloned, right? So there's one of me, fine, that's singular. But let's say I walk into like a cloning machine, and it's like part of it's got like little bubbles, and it's full of this weird viscous liquid that shoots out another David. Suddenly there's two Davids, maybe with tremble. But we have, how do we refer to ourselves? More than one me is us. The grammatical number increases. I'm part of the group now. Or for a more normal, prosaic, non-cloning example, let's say my sister and I are going out for coffee, and I refer to the two of us together as us. That's the grammatical number, it's plural. So it's important to remember when you are writing or speaking to keep singular and plural straight throughout the course of a sentence or a paragraph, because you don't want to mislead people into thinking you're talking about something else. Let me show you what I mean. For example, I would say, I looked at my watch. I don't have a watch anymore. Do you have watches? Do people still have watches? I wouldn't say I looked at our watch, unless sister and I both had the same watch and we traded it back and forth each month, which is pretty unlikely and kind of silly. And so what I'm trying to say is that our doesn't agree, doesn't match up with I or my. This is plural, this is singular. There's a very strange place to wear a watch for something. Oh, all right. So we've got the dog wagged its tail, right? Dog is singular, its is singular. I want to make sure these things match up. We made our beds. This is plural, and this is plural. As opposed to we made my beds, which, who has multiple beds, first of all? But it would also sound like multiple people, including me, were assisting me in making my many beds. There are two exceptions to this. And they are you and they. And either one can be singular or plural. So there can be a singular you or a plural you, there can be a singular they or a plural they, and I'll explain more about singular they later. The important thing is to be consistent overall. So if you establish that something is singular, you need to maintain that singularity throughout the rest of talking about that thing. So if I'm talking about cantaloupe, here's a test, it's about cantaloupe in real time without looking it up, that looks right to me. The cantaloupe was delicious. In the next sentence, I would say, I ate it in one sitting. And it's not I ate them, it's I ate it, because there's only one cantaloupe. You see? That's what I mean about grammatical number and grammatical number agreement. Is you just want to make sure that this thing, which we call an antecedent, links up with the pronoun. So the thing you say before you use the pronoun has to match up in terms of whether it's singular or plural. You get that figured out, you will be a master of grammatical number. You can learn anything. Give it out. Grammarians, I would like to tell you a tale of two elephants in order to get at the idea of this thing called the article. And we'll explain what that is after I tell you about the elephant and an elephant. Now, articles are words like a or an or the, and articles are a kind of adjective, some people would call them a determiner, that help you figure out how important something is, or how specific something is. So articles, what articles do is they tell you whether or not something is specific. You know, are you thinking about any old elephant when you talk about an elephant? Or are you thinking about one elephant in particular, the elephant? And this is the difference. When we're talking about the elephant, we're thinking about a specific elephant. We have a particular one in mind. Now, this is what's called the definite, because it defines what we're talking about. This elephant could be the queen of the elephants. And sometimes when we make sentences, we want to aim for that kind of precision. We want to be precise. We want to know exactly what we're talking about and who we're talking about and why. And that's a case where you use the word the or the. Now, if you're not being specific, if you're talking about any old elephant, an elephant that you're not especially familiar with, an elephant you haven't introduced before, that would be, you would say, an elephant, because it's not specific and it's undefined. So grammarians call that an indefinite article. When you know who and what you are talking about for sure, you say the or the. And when you're not sure, you say a or an. So if you knew that you were talking about say, for example, the queen of the elephants, the queen, as indicated by her royal crown, you would say the. And if you were talking about any old elephant, you'd say an. You'd use the indefinite article. We'll cover this more later. I just wanted to give you an introduction to the idea of what an article is. So the for specific, a or an for not specific. You can learn anything. David out. Hey, Remains. Hey, Paige.
Hi, David.
Hey, so Paige, I went to the grocery store yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and I got this apple,
Okay.
and I put it in the fridge. And this morning, when I opened the fridge, the apple was all like gross and sticky and mushy, and I really want to write a letter to the grocery store and say, hey, you sold me a gross apple.
Yeah.
But I'm stuck.
Okay.
I feel like I ought to put a comma in here. So so here's the sentence I've got so far. You sold me a mushy, sticky apple.
Gross.
Gross. Unacceptable.
Totally.
So I would like my $1.38 back. But in another draft of the letter, I wrote, you sold me a mushy green apple.
Okay, so mushy sticky or mushy green.
Yeah, and I feel like, and I don't know how to put this into words yet, but we're going to put it into words because that's our job, whether or not there should be a comma in between mushy and green, or mushy and sticky.
Yeah.
Because these feel different to me.
Right. Yeah, so there's actually a couple tests that you can do on these sentences to see if you need a comma between the adjectives or not.
So, Paige, what just...
make it bigger so you can see it.
I can see it. It's a touch screen.
You know how to make it bigger?
Not on this.
And shift it.
Oh wait, no, I see. There we go.
Make it bigger, I think. I bet you don't want to eat any of this vegetable.
Thank you.
Did you eat lunch?
Mm-hmm.
When you back?
Hmm?
What did you eat?
I had the cucumber and grapes you gave me.
That's all?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't buy it on? I bet because it's just for you then. What you were gonna finish.
I'm gonna finish.
Okay, I might start eating it. You want some grapes?
Hmm?
Do you have grapes for you?
What?
You want some grapes?
Yes, please.
I'll bring that to you here. Okay, another plate. It's always vegetable anyway. So I can just make you a big breakfast every morning. And you guys will just go take some cucumber, right?
Yeah.
Cucumber and fruit with you, and maybe a little a bag of chips.
Mm-hmm.
And a bottle of water. Make sure you take a bottle of water with you tonight.
Okay.
In your backpack, so you always have a bottle. I don't know if Sean eat anything today. But he already had his grapes in it. Almost that, and then it's all mine.
Okay.
Vegetable. You did not buy lunch, huh? So if I give you allowance, you probably won't eat lunch, huh? Hmm?
Thank you.
Always on the first,
bill, bruh. Never overdraft cause the bank account's filled up. The way
That's the end of this stream.
think that I was beat. Check the block full.